Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. A simple childhood rhyme, sung for generations. But could its origins be far more sinister than we ever imagined? In this video, we'll explore the dark and unsettling history behind Ring Around the Rosy, or as we call it here in Britain, Ring-a-Ring-a-Rosies, and delve into the theories that link it to one of the deadliest plagues in history. You'll discover the eerie connections to disease, superstition, and forgotten rituals, and uncover hidden clues in older versions of the rhyme that may reveal a truth stranger than fiction. But is this beloved nursery rhyme really about the plague, or is there something else lurking beneath the surface? Welcome back, Darklings. Before we unearth its sinister past, let's take a look at the most familiar versions of this eerie rhyme. The British version of the rhyme has an old-world charm, complete with sneezing. Ring-a-ring-a-rosies, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. Meanwhile, the American version is slightly different and replaces sneezing with ashes. Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, we all fall down. It is widely believed, and often accepted as fact, that this simple nursery rhyme describes the horrors of the plague, whether the Great Plague of London in 1665 or the Black Death that ravaged Europe in the 14th century. Plague was a terrifying disease, but what many people don't realise is that it came in 3 deadly forms. The most infamous was bubonic plague, spread by fleas, leaving victims with painful, swollen lumps, or buboes, in the armpits, neck, or groin. Then there was septicemic plague, where the bacteria entered the bloodstream, turning skin black with gangrene before death. But the most terrifying of all was pneumonic plague, an airborne killer, spreading through coughs and sneezes, almost always fatal within days. With its eerie lines about ashes, sneezing, and falling down, could this rhyme really be referencing the terrifying disease that wiped out millions across Europe? The line, "Ring around the rosy," or Ring-a-ring-a-rosies, is said to describe the red, ring-shaped buboes that appeared on plague victims' bodies. Alternatively, some interpret it as a rash, though rashes weren't a common symptom of the plague. A pocket full of posies refers to the practice of carrying flowers, herbs, and fragrant items to ward off disease, or mask the stench of death. During the medieval period, many believed illness spread through bad air, or miasma, which is why plague doctors stuffed their beak-like masks with aromatic flowers and herbs. It's also worth noting that pockets, as we think of them today, did not exist at the time. Instead, a pocket referred to a small bag or pouch tied to a belt. The tradition of carrying posies to ward off disease still lingers today. For centuries, British monarchs have taken part in the Royal Maundy Service, distributing Maundy money to elderly citizens in recognition of their service. In return, they receive small posies of flowers, a relic of medieval times when monarchs washed the feet of the poor as an act of humility. Since the poor often had unwashed, foul-smelling feet, the posies helped mask the odour and offered protection from illness. The line, a tissue, is often linked to sneezing, one of the symptoms of pneumonic plague, the deadliest form of the disease, which attacked the lungs and caused violent coughing, sneezing, and bloody sputum. Meanwhile, the American version, ashes, is said to reference the burning of plague victims' bodies in an attempt to contain the disease. And finally, we all fall down is perhaps the most haunting line of all, a stark, chilling reference to death. Most of us have heard this plague theory, but how accurate is it? Despite its widespread acceptance, there are actually no historical records from the time that mention the rhyme, not in Samuel Pepys's diary, nor in any other contemporary plague accounts. The symptoms don't fully match the lyrics either. Rashes were not a common symptom, and while some believe the phrase ashes refers to burning plague victims' bodies, historical evidence suggests that most were buried in mass graves, not burned. Even more telling is that Catherine Elwys Thomas, a well-known researcher of nursery rhyme origins, made no mention of the plague theory in her 1930 book, The Real Personages of Mother Goose. Given that she explored the historical connections behind rhymes like Bar Bar Black Sheep and Jack and Jill, it seems strange that she wouldn't include such a compelling idea. Yet, by the 1950s, the plague explanation had taken on a life of its own, becoming the widely accepted origin of the rhyme. The renowned folklorists Iona and Peter Opie noted that almost everyone they encountered was keen to tell them the plague theory, so much so in fact that they joked about staying at home, just to avoid hearing it yet again. But if the plague theory doesn't hold up, then where did this rhyme actually come from? Perhaps earlier printed versions can give us some clues. The earliest known mention in English appears in 1855 in the Old Homestead, but it's noticeably different from the version we know today. A ring of roses, laps full of posies, awake, awake, now come and make a ring of roses. Another version was printed a few years later in Kate Greenaway's Mother Goose of 1881. Ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, hush, hush, we're all tumbled down. Neither of these versions mentions sneezing or ashes. The earliest version said to exist was recorded in William Wells Newell's Games and Songs of American Children in 1883. The author claimed he had collected the rhyme from an elderly relative, dating it back to at least 1790. Ring a rosy, a bottle full of posies, all the little girls in town, ring for little Josie. Newell also described how, at the end of the rhyme, the children would suddenly stoop, with the last to do so facing a penalty or taking the place as the character of little Josie in the centre. Interestingly, an 1846 article describes a different version of a game called Ring o' Roses. In this version, a boy selects a girl from the circle and kisses her. Both these games strongly suggest that the rhyme unexpectedly shares an origin with Little Miss Muffet. In my video on Little Miss Muffet, I explored its roots in the cushion dance, a scandalous drinking and courtship game dating back at least to the 17th century. I highly recommend watching that video for more detail, but essentially, Puritans viewed these types of dances, especially ones that encouraged kissing and flirtation, as morally corrupt. As such, these traditions were increasingly frowned upon, evolving into more innocent, child-friendly versions, rather than the rowdy, drunken games they had once been. In fact, early Puritan colonies in America, and other conservative Protestant groups, banned dancing outright, considering it sinful. To get around this, people held play parties, where children and adults played ring games instead of dancing. Most folklorists believe this is the true origin of the rhyme, but that's not the end of the story. There's an even older German rhyme that bears a striking resemblance to Ring Around the Rosie, and this one might actually support the plague theory. A German rhyme, first printed in 1796, bears a striking resemblance to Ring Around the Rosie. Translated into English, it reads, ring a row, we are 3 children, sitting under the elder bush, and all go hush, hush, hush. Like Ring Around the Rosie, this German rhyme is part of a long tradition of children's ring games. However, what stands out is its reference to an elder tree. In European folklore, the elder tree was a powerful protector against evil spirits, witches, and disease. Commonly planted near homes and barns, it was believed to ward off illness and had strong healing properties. In medieval times, people hung elder branches in doorways, barns, and on horses' harnesses to keep sickness and evil spirits at bay. Interestingly, its strong aroma repels flies, which may explain its ancient association with disease prevention. During the 14th century Black Death and later plague outbreaks, elderberries and elderflowers were widely used in folk medicine. Elderflower tea was a traditional remedy for fevers and respiratory illnesses, while elderberry syrup was believed to soothe coughs and sore throats. Salves made from elderflowers were applied to boils, burns, and blisters, including buboes, the painful swellings caused by bubonic plague. The 17th century herbalist John Evelyn praised the elder tree as a kind of catholicon against all infirmities whatever, essentially a cure-all remedy. With such a deep-rooted connection to illness and healing, could there actually be a link between this rhyme and the plague after all? But the elder tree wasn't just valued for its medicinal properties, it was steeped in mysticism and superstition. Some traditions saw it as a gateway to the fairy realm, believed to house the spirit of the Earth Mother. With such strong folkloric ties to magic and protection, it's easy to see why the elder tree may have woven its way into a children's rhyme. But if Ring Around the Rosie wasn't originally about the plague, then where did this eerie association come from? The answer may lie in the history of public health campaigns. The bacterial cause of the plague was only discovered in 1894, and from that point onward, public awareness of disease prevention began to grow. This emphasis on hygiene became even more urgent after the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, which killed millions worldwide. As fear of contagion spread, so did government efforts to teach the public about hygiene. By World War II, governments were using rhymes and slogans to encourage better hygiene. One of the most famous was, "Coughs and sneezes spread diseases." This phrase was first used during the 1918 influenza pandemic in the United States, and later adopted by Commonwealth health ministries during World War II. The goal was to remind people to cover their mouths, use handkerchiefs, and be more mindful of hygiene to stop the spread of illness. It's entirely possible that children's playground games absorbed this growing awareness of sneezing and disease, gradually shaping the modern interpretation of Ring Around the Rosie as a plague-related rhyme. But whether fact or folklore, its eerie reputation has given it an enduring legacy, keeping the rhyme alive in public imagination for generations. Whether or not Ring Around the Rosie truly originated from the plague is almost irrelevant. What matters is its power to keep the past alive. This simple rhyme draws us back to the fears, beliefs, and struggles of those who came before us. As long as we continue to sing it, those who lived and suffered through the plague are never truly forgotten. But what do you think? Does the rhyme hold a dark secret, or is it simply a case of folklore evolving over time? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if your thirst for nursery rhyme origins still lingers, be sure to subscribe and explore the rest of my channel. See you in a future video.